Tonight, Kelly and I are going to reminisce about the closest I ever came to participating in a sporting event. This is Bog Panda. I am Dr. Mike at Official Pagan on everything. I did that even smoother than Kelly did. Joining me, as always.
Hi, everybody. This is Kelly at KELLYTHUL on Twitter and Instagram. And if you get a chance, we'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the Bog Panda YouTube channel. If you like this video, give it a big old like. Check out some of our other videos and give those some likes too. They really would help us out. Also, while you're kind of hanging around in the vicinity, be sure and check out Hard No, the world's shortest podcast, available as a playlist and a podcast on YouTube. So check out Hard No. And then, of course, spin by the ever-changing, always updated merch store where there's now a Doom in My Room t-shirt. So you should probably check that one out.
Absolutely. I've been playing so much Doom lately as well.
And then, in addition, good friend of the show, Rebecca Kennedy, is involved in another project. So we know her and love her from the upcoming film Crust. And we've had her and Sean Whalen on talk about that. And so very excited about that. Go and check those videos out. Super awesome. But she's now going to be involved. They're working to get a film set up called Sweet Molly. And they're doing some more kind of Kickstarter-ish type of stuff for that. If you go to the website, Sweet Molly, MOLLY, Sweet Molly, MOLLY film, FILM, it'll be down below because of my poor diction and explaining things, and we'll also include a link in our description. If you get a chance to go over there and can contribute, we'll help some folks working independently to create some good stuff, to do some more stuff. Rebecca is super awesome, a great friend of the show, and any chance we get to support her, we want to. So let's give her that Bog Panda bump. Go to Sweet Molly Film and contribute what you can to help make this movie. It looks pretty cool. It's going to be kind of a sci-fi meets fundamental Mormonism film. So there's that, so that and somehow she can astral project. And I think Rebecca's the lead in this. And sounds super quirky, interesting, strange, and fun. So give it a chance to take a look if you can.
I mean, you had me at Molly, and then you went and sweetened the pot with fundamental Mormonism.
Right. What more can you ask for?
But that's not what we're here to talk about today. This is not one of our famed Doom episodes. This is talking about two things from the past, because you have to talk about the larger picture of Blockbuster Video in order to get into this. Now, Kelly, explain to the kids what a video store was.
Well, they were made out of mud and straw.
Sounds right.
Yeah, back in the day, then when there were things that were called VHS tapes, which you probably have never seen. Think about a video 8-track is a VHS tape. There were lots of them, and before there was a Netflix, if you wanted to say, hey, there's a movie I'd like to see, you'd make your way to the video store, and there would be rows upon rows that you could browse through and find various movies if they were still in stock, because some of the movies would be really hot. Also, some video stores like Family Video would rent video games. So you could rent Nintendo 64 games and all that kind of stuff, which is where I first got exposed to Surfboard Kids, was through a rental of video store. And wish I had just kept that thing and taken the late charge on it, because that's a hard one to score these days. But it's where one would go. And it is also, because of some partnerships they had, the place that I discovered I would never buy a Virtual Boy. So because they had one set up at the local Blockbuster.
Yeah, one of the cool things about Blockbuster, and I'm sure there was other places that did this, but as a huge national chain like Blockbuster. So we weren't a big Blockbuster family. There was a mom and pop video store that's actually a few blocks really from where I live now. Used to be. It's no longer there, of course, but there was a little mom and pop video store that we used to frequent. Blockbuster, though, kind of took a lot of the other places out of business. They were a major national chain, because even some of the other chains, like Hollywood Video and things like that, they weren't everywhere. Blockbuster was everywhere. It was the Walmart of video stores that was just everywhere and ubiquitous. They got a lot of, as popular as they were, there was an equal amount of criticism of them because again, they were the big box retailer pushing out the smaller mom and pop chains. They also were kind of restrictive in some of the movies that they would have available there. There was no adult films available there, and there were frequently not unrated films either, or NC-17 rated films. They would often require filmmakers make edited versions specifically for Blockbuster of some of their movies. So that's where you get the amazing, I'm going to say, R-rated cut of Showgirls, which is barely watchable. Even better is the TV version, the edited for TV version of Showgirls, where they had to airbrush clothes onto people because they're just walking around naked. So there was no way to cut around it. So there's this awful airbrush. This is pre-CGI. So this awful airbrushed clothing that looks like somebody just literally taped something to the screen of your TV when you're trying to watch it. Good times. But Blockbuster Video, for being such a huge chain, rented out video game systems as well. And that's not something that was super common. A lot of the mom and pop places didn't do that. And if they did, it was usually Neo Geo. Neo Geo was a system created by SNK that was literally their arcade units. Neo Geo, the way that they got dominance in the arcade space, SNK in the arcade space, they created an arcade cabinet called a Neo Geo. And instead of having to buy new cabinets and throw out the old cabinets or refurbish them to fit new games, it took actual cartridges. They were giant, but huge cartridges that the arcade owner could come and just swap games in and out of. So they decided that they could create a rental home version of this that you plug into your TV like a console and rent the cartridges for. You could buy it as well, but it was like $1,000 in 1990 money. So $1 billion today. I'm not sure what the the exchange rate is on it. And games were hundreds of dollars, the actual cartridges, because it was the literal arcade boards that you were just popping in there. But you could rent any kind of system at Blockbuster. You could rent Nintendo 64 and PlayStation and all those when they were brand new. So a lot of people who couldn't afford those systems, that was a good way for them to try them out before they spent that kind of money and, find out what games they liked and things like that. Because of that, Blockbuster had a reputation of being very gamer friendly. And they became a sponsor of a World Video Game Championship. So video game championships are something that still happens. They were really prevalent in the 90s, and maybe it's just because I'm not super into a lot of newer games, so I don't know how big they are. I know they're huge for certain games, but they just seem to kind of be everywhere for all types of games when I was a kid. But the Blockbuster one was pretty big because Blockbuster being such a big brand, of course they had, more prestige, and it was advertised everywhere, and there was big prizes and things like that. So finally, I decided I was going to join one of these video game championships. And one of the ones that I played in was this Blockbuster video game championship that we're talking about. And the reason we're talking about it is for these championships, because back in the day, games were on cartridges. Game companies would manufacture special cartridges for these competitions. A lot of times these competition cartridges, because they were never released to the public, would become huge collector's items. And luckily, we came across a completely legal ROM of one of these cartridges. So I got to share with Kelly what I actually played at this particular video game championship. And the way that it worked, you had to go and play 3 times. So you had to physically go to a location. Somebody was there, like a scoring person, another person who watched the cartridge, and it was a whole big thing. But the main game of the competition was NBA Jam Tournament Edition, which that's the reason that I joined. I love NBA Jam, though. It's the reason I joined that particular competition. Loved NBA Jam, was very good at it. Not to brag, but it was particularly good at NBA Jam. So I figured this will be easy. Well, to level the playing field a little bit, since not everybody loves NBA Jam the way that I did, there was also a second game added, which was Judge Dredd, the movie tie-in game for the Sylvester Stallone version of Judge Dredd, not the vastly superior version that came out years later starring Carl Urban, but the Sylvester Stallone one. And the trick with that was that game wasn't out yet. So that was the kind of equalizer there, is nobody had played that game. So regardless of where you fell, you had a chance to kind of pick it up or destroy how well you did in NBA Jam by playing some game nobody's ever seen before. So unfortunately for me, my first two times I did not do well. I actually did okay in Judge Dredd in all three, but my first two times in a very uncharacteristic fashion, I tanked at NBA Jam. And then the third time I did so well in NBA Jam, I had the highest score of anybody in the region. I became the regional winner just off of that one game of NBA Jam. So luckily, it wasn't a total loss for me, but I didn't get as far. If I had done even slightly better in those first two NBA Jam games, I would have progressed a lot further in the tournament. But I was still like the regional champion. I did win stuff. I don't remember what it was now because it was 150 years ago. But it was cool to kind of come across this totally legal ROM and tell Kelly about this and share it with him. And kind of, I was interested to see your thoughts. Have you ever been involved in any sort of video game competition? Were you familiar with how these worked? And what did you think playing it?
Yeah, so lots of no's there. Never been in a video tournament. I had no idea how these worked. I mean, it kind of makes sense, particularly given the era, that there'd be kind of tournament specific cartridges, depending on how hard the companies are leaning in to support them. So I think that's pretty cool. So you've mentioned kind of on multiple shows that you're a big NBA Jam fan, and I've got it on the Legends, I've got it on Super Console X, got it in a bunch of places, and I have dabbled with it here and there, but in preparation for the show, Super Console X was the platform that I was at Totally Legal Round that Mike was talking about, that was available on there. So if you got a Super Console X, you very likely have this game. And I went back in and I was like, oh, I kind of like NBA Jam. It's pretty good. So really enjoyed kind of the gameplay on there. The Dread one's not bad either. So it was interesting, and then seeing the score, but then I just didn't know the logistics to say, okay, so because this is a one and done. You play one quarter of NBA Jam,
Right.
you go on Judge Dredd for a time limit, and then it says you're done. Here's your NBA Jam score. Here's your Judge Dredd score. Here's your total. And then I'm like, so did you do this at home and then like have to email it in? I didn't know how it worked, so made sense that they had kind of a proctored space that you could go in and make sure that nothing untoward was helping. But no, I thought it was super cool. I was really glad I had access to it to try it out. I did have to, when I found it originally, going through the Emulac kind of carousel and environment to bring up the games, I found it and I could bring it up, but would just paint the bezels on the side and the screen would be black. And then had to go into RetroArch and dug around a little bit more and got to where I could flip the core. There were two cores available. I changed it to the other core that they had available, and it worked just great. But I kept trying to make that thing stick so that I could go through the kind of cleaner, at least more fun interface that sits on top of a Super Console X. And took a lot of tries, but I eventually got it all done and set now for there. So, but which I was glad I did, because fun gameplay, interesting pairing, I guess. But to your point, if part of the idea was let's give you something that's going to be new to everybody to kind of test you out on that way, it made sense. So I thought it was very cool.
Yeah, the tournament was NBA Jam focused, and they did let you know in advance, because this was like insanely, this was on TV and in magazines and newspapers and things like that. So they did let everybody know in advance, like there's going to be another, you didn't know what it was going to be though. There's going to be another game attached to this, or at least I didn't going into it till I was there. So, and that was Judge Dredd, and they're the same publisher had put out both of the games. So it made sense. And it was something that made sense to choose only because nobody had played it. So it was new to everybody. I don't remember the Judge Dredd game doing particularly well, so I don't know that it helped sales. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody knows figures on that. but it certainly was no NBA Jam. Everybody had NBA Jam, and NBA Jam was ported to every platform. It was the sports equivalent of Doom. It was on everything. And that particular version of NBA Jam is the NBA Jam Tournament Edition, which overhauls a lot of elements of it. That was the Tournament Edition on Sega Genesis is my personal favorite edition of the game, even more so than the arcade version, and even more so than 32X. And I'm a huge 32X fan. 32X, though, brings back this zooming feature that the arcade does, which is actually not on any of the other home ports at the time, that I actually am not a huge fan of. It's cool in the arcade when you're playing with like 4 people, because the arcade was 4 players. But on a home console, I actually think it detracts from the gameplay. I think it's distracting, zooming in and out while you're playing. And I'm not a fan of that in any game that does that. Art of Fighting was the first one that I remember doing that, a Neo Geo game, which is why that's one of my least favorite games of theirs. And I don't like it in like Smash Brothers and things like that either. So I like a more I don't like tons of camera movement like that. So that's my personal favorite iteration of NBA Jam. Now, it also, for this tournament version, it does turn on hotspots and things like that. I don't know if you noticed that. So on the court, you'll see little places where if you make a shot from those marks, you get extra bonus points for that. That's something you can toggle on and off, along with a bunch of other features in the actual full version of the game, which I'm sure is on your Super Console X.
Yep. Yeah, very cool. So for those Super Console X owners out there, check it out, because if there and other folks dig around and find a perfectly legal way to get this ROM and play it, because it's very nice. And it's kind of fun to play, and it's kind of cool. It'd be interesting to see what other ones are out there kicking around outside of this one, now that we've kind of come across this one. So if you know one, let us know. I was
super excited just because I actually played in this tournament, so it was fun to kind of come across that. But I know there are a lot of other tournament cartridges and things, because those are big collectors things for retro gamers, because there's very few of them made and they were closely guarded. So those are big ticket items. When you do see one physically pop up for sale, they go for quite a bit of money.
And if you get one, Michael sell his autograph to you for the low price of 40 Atari tokens. So there you go. Excellent.
And I definitely, I can't highly recommend NBA Jam enough. Tournament Edition on Sega Genesis has tons of extra content, including a lot of really stupid but fun unlockable characters in there. You can play as Bill Clinton, for example.
I got nothing. I have nothing to say.
Set you up, Bill Clinton balls. Come on.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bog Panda.